All right. Hi. I'm host Eric. Host Talking Things People. And initiator of this video entitled, not really a video, it's a live stream, but entitled, Let's Talk About Important Things. If you're like me and most people, you may be stuck in a world where you find yourself compelled during certain periods of time anyway to talk about unimportant things. And you probably think, hey, I'm sick of that. I want to talk about stuff that's important. Stuff like trees and people and rocks, those sort of things. Important things. As you may or may not know, it's been a cruel, cruel summer. And it's been difficult moving here to Burbank, the greater Burbank area from back east. It's not been easy. I run afoul with a group of bullies. He, got a little upset at me trying to hit on his girlfriend, beat me up and stuff. I said, hey, I didn't enjoy getting beat up. I need to learn some karate. So I met an old Japanese man who had me do a lot of chores for him. And then, long story short, I kicked the bully in the head. So that's just reviewing my life up until now.
Oh.
How I moved from back east to the Burbank area, met up with some bullies, tried to hit on one of their girlfriends, and they beat me up. I met an old Japanese man. He taught me karate. My life story. You've heard it before.
I heard they did like a TV.
Well, there's this movie that totally ripped off my life, but I think it was just incidental.
Mm.
I'm assuming they didn't know about it. It was called Die Hard. That was me. That was my life. Anyhow, let's talk about important things. Is both the title of the video and my command to us all. Now, if you're a disobedient type like me, you'll probably respond by immediately talking about unimportant things. However, now that I've suggested you might do that, perhaps you'll change course and decide to join forces with me to talk about important things. What's the first important thing I have to talk about today? Good question. That's a really good question. When I started this live stream, what was I planning to say? I didn't really have a plan. I just felt a notion in my heart, that perhaps it was time to live stream. And I guess part of the reason for that is I accomplished a number of my desired chores today. I just successfully verified my ID on Coinbase and transferred money from there. They call it withdrawing money, transferring it from Coinbase to your bank account. Anyway, I successfully did that. And I was a little concerned that I was going to have problems because my driver's license has my old address on it. But it didn't give me any problems. So that was nice. And in the end, I actually made a little bit of money on Coinbase. Well, not quite yet. I still haven't sold the Cardano, which is at 64 cents now or something. But I liquidated the rest of my $500 worth of investment and got $530 or something back. So that's pretty good. Plus $30. So, important things. Obviously, a lot of life's most significant decisions require a certain amount of knowledge before the decision can be made. A lack of knowledge can result in making a poor decision or can not impact the decision making process. But it's rarely going to help. Right now, I feel like I need to make decisions, but I need more knowledge, more information. Say something smart. Okay. Don't forget to wash behind your ears. How about a smart quote from somebody else, such as, if it weren't for disappointments, I wouldn't have any appointments. That's from They Might Be Giants song. Or how about this excellent quote? You can lead a whore to culture, but you can't make her think. Dorothy Parker wrote that quote. If it had been written by a man, people might feel a little less comfortable about it, I suspect. Another Dorothy Parker quote, which resulted in a previous video on the subject of Dorothy Parkerisms, is probably her most famous quote. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. With that quote, she not only captured a fantastic quote, she also invented the genre of Dorothy Parkerisms. I don't remember what the ones I came up with from before were, but you can try to make up your own Dorothy Parkerism. Like, I'd rather drive a car to the market than market a drive to the car. That doesn't make any sense, but the point is, in terms of the construction of it, you too can attempt Dorothy Parkerisms. I'd rather. I'm just not. I'm just not inspired enough at the moment to actually come up with a good Dorothy Parkerism. It's not easy to do. Dorothy Parker, I don't know if her instance of bottle in front of me, frontal lobotomy, will ever be topped. I think it's the best Dorothy Parkerism anybody could ever make. But it's possible that. Okay, that's just the kids that come across the street playing on the hill over there. It's not like anybody doing construction. I guess they haven't heard the news that hill belongs to the people who told us they're going to construct on it. That's fine. They're just playing hill players, you know. So anyway, that's cool. Neighbors are out playing on the hill. See the kids in their jackets and their dog. Oh, that's their cat. That's Complain. And it's running around up there with them as well. I like to actually see them every once in a while. I hear them all the time. I never see them. Seem like a happy enough family, really, considering all the yelling and stuff. So I attempted my bread again earlier after the previous live stream, and it did come out better this time for sure. But it's also fair to say that it was still undercooked. So next time, I'm just gonna lock it in. Same ratios, It's going to be too wet again because I like the way that bread came out. But 42 minutes, and then I'll check. I just found it hard to believe that it could take that much more time than the recommended time, 25 to 30 minutes. But I got to trust my eyes because in my life, I have witnessed many a loaf of bread come out of my mother's oven. I've noted the color of it, its general brownness on the outside, and I can tell with my eyes if the brownness of the outside of my bread is the same as that brownness from memory. I could tell with my eyes it wasn't brown enough, but once again, I trusted my deliberation about it rather than my knowledge. Namely, this seems like too much time based on the estimates I saw online. I should have trusted my conscious knowledge function, SI, rather than my third slot conscious interface function, FE. Instead, being an objectivist, I say, well, I don't really know about this. I'm sure these people who write things on the internet probably bake a lot more bread than I do. I'll ask them how long to cook it for. Well, I would have been better off just going straight to slot number 4, comparing against my remembered image in my head of what a finished loaf of bread looks like. My mom always made great loaves of bread. Her bread was never undercooked or overcooked. Sometimes she used a bread machine, sometimes she didn't. Regardless, the moral of this story is objectivists like me beware. You'll have a tendency to undervalue and utilize your conscious, subjective epistemology functions, be they, or even unconscious, be they FI or SI. You're going to underutilize those when you should. There's lots of decisions in life where you should refer to your own feelings, other things in which your own experience is reliable, the other things when you should trust neither of those things. Well, it's hard to, you know, it's kind of like an actor gets typecast as a certain kind of character, probably because they're best at acting like that. Clear bottom kayaks is an important topic often overlooked. That's what the nudists use when they go kayaking, so that other nudists can swim under their kayak and see their junk. Because what's more freeing and spiritually liberating than letting everybody look at your penis? That's what nudists think. Like, what inspires you to become a nudist? I just like to be naked all the time. I mean, what are you, a caveman? Even cavemen had animal furs they could wrap around them. Humans don't have enough fur to be naked. That's why we have to wear clothes, because the sun will scorch our skin, or the cold will make us shiver, etc. The rain will get us wet and extra cold if it's raining. That's why we need clothes. Trying to be a nudist means, okay, first of all, where are you living?
What are you doing?
Where are you living that you can be naked all the time and not experience any environmental consequences from that? You just have to be walking around naked all the time in your house and then occasionally go to a nude beach with a lot of sunscreen on. It's like people are like, oh, this is a more natural way of living. Is it? It's totally not, right? There's nothing natural about human beings going around naked because we aren't biologically equipped to survive that way. I mean, we haven't evolved to survive naked. Humans, instead of evolving fur, evolved clothes. That's part of just the amazing flexibility of our genome. We're able to evolve clothes. One day, there was a baby born to a hunter-gatherer, and the baby was born with pants on. Then that baby passed on the pants genes to his child, which he had with a girl baby who was born with a shirt on. And then their baby was born with pants and a shirt on. And the rest is history. That's where clothes came from. Evolutionary science, once again, provides a satisfying answer to an important question. Where did clothes come from? Where did clothes come from? Now, your fundamentalist Christians, referencing Genesis, might say that clothes came about because when we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, once they were outside the Garden of Eden, suddenly said, "Oh shit, I'm naked. I'm embarrassed by that." Because in the Garden of Eden, there was no embarrassment, no shame. I mean, it was just all one family too. Hi, I just subbed to you. Well, thanks, Christy. Evil Bufu 77 milligrams, 777 milligrams. 777 milligrams of what? Whatever it is, I'm down. Are we taking 777 milligrams of... I mean, that's a lot of milligrams, actually. I'm not sure I'm down with that. It depends what we're taking. Mean Girls. 777 Mean Girls, huh? Are you a mean girl? I don't think you should aspire to be one if you are. If you're simply describing the world saying, for every 1 million persons in the population, there are 777 mean girls, well, that would be fine. I'd wonder. No, I've not watched Nicolina 777, but if it's an anime, I'm surprised I've never heard of it. Have you ever watched it?
Mean Girls is also a movie.
Yes.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan.
But it's also a description of a demographic of people.
Yes.
So I'm not sure which one Christy Evil BFU 777 Mean Girls is talking about. The movie, the population. No, she is cool. Oh, is it a YouTuber? Nicolina 777? I didn't know that. We got named that on here.
Yes, the movie.
I think she's saying yes, it's a YouTuber.
Oh, yes, it's a YouTuber.
Nicolina 777,
huh?
Nicolina
777.
What does Nicolina 777 talk about?
Tarot. 3D life compared to the 5D life.
I was thinking maybe
Manifesting.
they talked about slot machines. And 777 is a great number for a slot machine. What's BFU? Back the fuck up. Lamau, caps lock. It's okay, it happens to the best of us here, Lamb. Occasionally we accidentally shout when typing. Pretty hot dad! Ben Franklin University. Welcome to Ben Franklin University, where I will train you to be just like Ben Franklin.
So it's like one of the first projects that you do, like put a kite in the sky with a, a key at the end?
Yep. That's how you discover electricity. The next thing you do is you write a farmer's almanac. And you come up with some pleasant quips that people will quote, like, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. You doing dabs? Rachel's hitting the, what's it called? pen or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
I guess I call it a pen.
One of these things. This is a disposable vape, right? It's like you buy it, it all comes together like this, and then when you're done with it, you just throw the whole thing away. Oh, he said plenty of dumb shit. Early to bed, early to rise makes man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Is fairly dumbass shit right there, you know. He did say one of my preferred quotes, which is, "Those who are willing to sacrifice essential liberty for security deserve neither."
Yeah, they make them disposable now.
Yeah, you can get this at the store. Like this one was, well, this was a cheap one, huh? This one was under $30.
Yeah.
And it's the one we like best of the four we got.
One of the best. The ghost one. No, this is not the ghost. I've been saving the ghost.
Oh, let me try the ghost one. I got it wrong. That's not the one we like best.
No.
The one we like best was actually the cheapest one. It tastes like pine trees. It's delicious. Occasionally, I'll buy concentrate and put a little bit of it on top of a bong rip, but this is kind of a more efficient way to smoke concentrate. Mm. Well, they sell them like that in California. You can also buy these kind. Like this, this kind is probably the kind you're more familiar with. You buy just this part, and then you have to have one of these, and then you screw it into this. This one is Northern Lights, this particular concentrate. And it's pretty good. I like it. You know, I prefer to pull bong rips, but I guess I most prefer to do both.
I just cough so much with bong rips. I feel like.
Yeah. You're a coffee Kofi Annan.
Yeah. It does make me feel like. Okay, so like, I judge myself because both you and Cameron are bong smokers and I'm not. And so I feel like I'm not part of the group.
You're still smoking weed, you just prefer a different smoking mechanism.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben has nothing to do with Ben Franklin. That's not the Uncle Ben they were referring to. The Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima products are like the restaurant that used to exist. It was called Little Black Sambo's. They are representative of what you might call plantation coziness and sort of romanticize the old-timey Negro. So naturally, people are like, "Hi, you know, old-timey Negro is kind of offensive." And then they said, "Okay, well, let's not have Little Black Sambo's restaurant anymore. Let's change the name to Little Racially Neutral Sambo." And let's replace Aunt Jemima with Aunt Sarah Bennington. Mother, career woman, feminist. Also a black lesbian.
I mean, like, I don't necessarily get hired from bong rips. I just fucking cough lungs up, and it's not fun.
Yeah, if you've not witnessed Rachel coughing before, I mean, both of us will periodically have big coughing fits, you know, cough until you puke, basically. But it happened a lot more frequently with Rachel than with me if she's pulling bong rips. But if she's just smoking concentrate, like from these cartridges, then she coughs just occasionally, like a regular amount. Sometimes she takes a really big head out if she'll cough too much, but that's life, you know. The point is, it's manageable for her and her lungs. And Rachel is not a big woman. She's 5'2", okay? And her lungs are the size of somebody who's 5'2". Which is to say, she's got kind of baby lungs. So, just let her do her thing and don't bust her chops. So it was pretty cool to see the big prescribed burns they were doing yesterday, or I guess it was yesterday. There's this guy in this like enlarged forklift thing that was pushing logs around on this massive fire of big ass logs. And then after I filmed him doing that, he shouted something, "Oh no, brother," and waved at me. So he seemed like it was fine with me filming it. And I waved back, you know. So he seemed like he was happy that I was doing it. But I couldn't hear what he actually said, so I felt unsure about that. But Rachel reassured me that, in fact, yeah, he was fine with it. She could probably tell more definitively by his tone, you know. I'm a little wary of knowing things about tone. If I can't hear the specific words that are being said, he could have said, "Hey, get the fuck out of here, brother," but in a really cheerful tone. I don't think that's what happened, but it's possible. Anyway, unsurprisingly, it's got a construction vehicle and a fire going on. And it got like 3,000 views as a short. It's pretty good. I'll tell you what else is pretty good. Going to the bathroom. Peeing, pooping, doesn't really matter. Both of them, great. They're both very good activities to do. They make you physically feel more, you know, fit and ready. Piping hot. Well, based on the color of my pee, though, I will say I appear to be a little bit dehydrated. Currently drinking coffee, but maybe you should have a bottle of water in between this coffee and any other beverage. You know, here's a piece of wisdom I had somebody say to me. I think it was a shrink guy. You're from upstate New York. Rachel's originally from Long Island.
Yeah.
Franklin Square specifically. But we currently live here in California, just outside of Yosemite, in the middle of California, like smack dab in the center of California, on the western Low Sierra Mountains. The eastern Sierra is called the High Sierras. That's why I mentioned it. We're just the Sierras. We're not really the Low Sierras, but this is where I live. I live where you get a lot of these kind of trees and stuff, you know. here in beautiful California, the Golden State. Now, the wisdom I wanted to share with people, and this is actually excellent life advice that I heard from, I'm pretty sure, a shrink I had one time, which is most of the mistakes people regret in life, they make after they say, fuck it. If you find yourself saying fuck it and you're about to do something, don't do that thing. If that's your reasoning for doing something, don't do it. It was nice talking to you, but I have to go back to work. If I catch you, sure, whatever. See you later. Nice chatting with you too. As I always tell people who offer such goodbyes, you're welcome to do so, but I expect no such being informed of people's comings and goings. Now, so if you find yourself saying fuck it, don't do the thing you're about to do. It seems like that expression correlates with bad decisions very strongly. I found it to be true in my own life ever since. I always remember that. Like, Rachel, can you mute, please? Thank you for muting your phone. Yes, thank you for muting your phone.
So the only time I've ever said fuck it and was like, I just like had no choice, it was appropriately used was when I shaved my hair, because like I was like,
well, in that case, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, but like, yeah, like fuck it, I'm gonna shave it all off.
Right.
Like,
there's not really any other solution. That's not really a fuck it moment. It's like, for me, the reference here that I've experienced today, off of which I'm like extrapolating or whatever, is I've been pretty proud of myself for successfully taking only the amount I'm prescribed of Adderall today. And there's been several occasions where I thought, it would still be pretty good if I just had 3 15s instead of 2. I could smoke one maybe. That sounds kind of fun. But at the end of the day, I realized, I keep thinking to myself, this is one of those bucket things, Eric. You don't need that. You're fine. You're happy. You're getting things done, etc. Don't be childish about your drug supply. Like, life is good. Everything's great on 30 milligrams. It's not better on more. It's more tweaked out maybe, but not better on it. And what sucks is not having any for a long time. I think it's good for me to not have any for 5 days a week or so. That's fine. That's sleepy week, right? But in order to have sleepy week, I need to do a much better job of just appreciating the benefits of taking the right amount without getting all drug addicty about it. You saw a no trespassing sign and said, fuck it. Well, sometimes you get away with fuck it, but sometimes you don't.
Yeah, but it still is something that you shouldn't do, right?
Right. If you're saying fuck it, you're basically saying, I'm doing this against my better judgment.
Yeah.
And that rarely works out well. Ruben R, you are so strong. The R must stand for are so strong. This is a quick auto turn off, one of these parts. If you don't hit it constantly, it turns itself off, and then you got to push it again to make it go on.
Hello, beauty.
Ruben's already on push-up 105, Hero Lamb.
Oh, yes.
Too slow with your chat. That's how fast he does push-ups. It's like just a blur.
Mommy didn't love you so much. Oh, yes. Oh, Pee-Pee Strauss.
Oliver Linehan, you are here, and welcome to you. It's delightful to see you.
It is.
You know?
It's delightful to see everyone.
It is delightful to see everyone, for sure. I especially like the fact that you enter the room with your colon showing.
Yes.
I think it's a good way to immediately show people you're not afraid to be vulnerable. The flexors for Eric's 30 milligram discipline. Well, thanks, Ruben. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it's overdue, and I don't know, exemplary of some kind of growth as a person to not need so much, just constantly. I already do. I already am, but if I can show a little bit more discretion in at least one area, then it's growth. I expect progress, not perfection, in my sobriety.
Yes. Mommy didn't love you.
We are closing in on the big 1-0. Today is the 21st of December.
Yeah.
Next is the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th. Then 26th. 5 days from now, I will have my 10-year sober birthday.
That's pretty great.
It is.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks, darling.
You're welcome. That's not an easy feat.
It's made all the difference in my life. You know, my dad used to say, has literally told me things like, a man should quit smoking by 30 and quit drinking by 40. This was probably before he was 40. He did not quit drinking. He did quit smoking, but he quit smoking before he was 30, right? So he'd say something like that. He also said things like, no man has any good ideas after their 35th birthday. Some shit like that, you know? Okay. Oh, do you do anal scent marking in your culture over like the meerkats? The courage to know that everyone's on the meow meow to the blah. No, Boba Fett, you got the serenity prayer wrong. It's, dear God, please give me the serenity to kick Buddha's ass, and the courage to kick his ass, and the wisdom to know when it's kicked. Because if you really want to be a warrior for Christ, you got to declare war on a different God. Could be Buddha, could be Allah, could be Zoroaster, you know. Could be
Who they have in Scientology?
L. Ron Hubbard, Xenu.
Yeah, Xenu.
It could be some Hindu god like Vishnu, or what's another Hindu god? There's the
Shiva?
elephant, Shiva. Thank you. There you go. Yeah, I am. I'm sober as fuck. You know when I'm most sober? When I'm very high.
Me too.
According to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I count as sober because Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion about anything but alcohol. I didn't shift substances. I was smoking weed and on Adderall before I quit drinking.
They took away, like when I was in Mercy Medical, like for their drug program, they took away weed from me because they would do like drug tests. And so like I fucking drank and like I definitely abused the shit out of it because I was like looking for like to get high, you know, and like drinking it fucking sucked. I did not miss drinking at all. I miss weed though.
Well,
So like, you know.
we successfully got you out of that clusterfuck and gave them a good scolding while we were at it.
Yeah.
Those POSs, Mercy Medical Center.
Yeah, I did just shift substances. It didn't work at all. Like, you know, like if you're you know, drug of choice is alcohol and you're fine with alcohol, and then like you get told you can't drink it anymore because you're gonna test it for it, you're gonna like act out in some other way. Like you're gonna find some other thing.
Because it messes with people's temporal bargaining arrangements.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The thing about intoxicants, or whatever you want to call it, hi Nicolina 777. I just heard about you from this other person. I know you're the same person, no doubt. But anyway, so the thing is, people use intoxicants and or indulgences of some kind. Can be food, could be shopping, could be
working out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't seem that indulgent to me, but maybe some people find it such.
Seriously, I've like met people who like will live a sober life, and their high is like working out, and it's their routines are fucking insane, and they feel like they can't function throughout the day if they don't do that routine.
Right. And for some people, it's gambling or whatever. The point is, people have various relationships with these indulgences that link to their coping with a world that's fundamentally not overwhelmingly welcoming to who they are, right? So people have good days and bad days. They have bad things happen to them, good things happen to them. They achieve and they fail, etc. Right? Each of those people, when they're going about doing things, makes deals like this with themselves, as simple as, okay, let me finish this task and then I'll go to lunch. Right? People do that all the time. With substances, those temporal bargaining arrangements, you don't know what's going on with that person. So for me, smoking pot is part of my program, part of how I stay sober from alcohol. I need something to function as that indulgence chip in my temporal bargaining framework. And I need to feel as though quitting drinking, instead of being a huge sacrifice, is a wonderful life enabling event that occurs and allows me to continue to abstain, right? If I didn't have any head change at all, in other words, if like anti-drug people succeeded in preventing me from getting Adderall and marijuana for long enough, or any other kind of head altering substance for long enough and kept saying, here, if you want to alter your head, drink alcohol. Who knows what would happen eventually, because I'm me operating in my framework. I've got my past and my understanding of self. Just as everyone's understanding of self includes, things that they find indulgently pleasurable. and that actually plays a pretty critical role in how we make deals with ourselves to do the stuff that's hard, when we have to engage in behaviors that aren't inherently pleasurable to us. I actually read about this whole temporal bargaining thing. Is not my idea at all. If you Google it, it's a study I read that was the most cogent set of arguments and stuff, regarding why drug laws don't work, essentially. But it wasn't politicized. Regardless, if you look at the study, I think you'll be. I mean, I normally don't say this to people. Go read this thing and you'll be convinced too. But I just want to stress, this is not me ideating about this, and this is something an idea I've worked with for a long time, because it's useful in certain kinds of debate topics. If you're debating anything that is kind of nanny state, you can use that block of argumentation. The thing is, beyond just being an effective block of argumentation, though, it resonates intuitively as true, and does provide at least that level of explanation as to why certain public policy matters linking to preventing people from doing what they want to do if they have a problem with it, right? Things that you might have a problem with, like drugs, gambling, vices, and shit, right? It does provide an intuitively resonant explanation for why the punitive approach in public policy doesn't work. So, Alison Soleil, I have the following question. Do you think when you asked me if you were projecting a bit, it's because you have a habit of projecting? Or is it even worse than that? Is it actually that I have a habit of projecting onto others that they have a habit of projecting when they correctly identified my behavior as projecting in the first place? Oh my God. I feel so unmasked. Okay, so I said I was going to drink a bottle of water after this coffee, but I'm not going to finish this coffee right now. I'm going to just start the bottle of water right now because I feel thirsty and my mouth feels all like coffeeed out, Tastes like the bottom of a coffee pot after a long day of conferences at Jacob's Office Work Emporium. What did you say, Rachel?
This screen just went.
Can you just move the mouse?
Yeah, I moved it.
Oh, thanks. What am I getting? Water, right. I'm going to get the big water. Actually, I'm not going to get the big water. I'm going to get a small water because the big water is cold and I prefer room temperature. Maybe you're just intuiting something a lot of people don't know about me. I used to be a projectionist at the movie theater. That's right. So, in this instance, maybe you just interpreted behavior as projecting because you intuited that used to be my job. Was I really a projectionist in a movie theater? No, I wasn't. By the time I was old enough to get a job, they no longer had projectionists at movie theaters. They had done away with those quite some years before, I believe. I need to find my glasses so I can see things. There's another card that goes with the temporal bargaining block, which is called extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So there's a study that shows that regardless of how you feel about a thing you're doing, that if you add extrinsic motivation to the equation, it'll make you want to do the thing less. So in other words, let's say you've got the radio on and you're dancing over here and you're loving it, and then somebody comes and says, I'll pay you $10 to keep dancing for another 10 minutes. It'll make you enjoy the dancing less. Your motivation to dance will go down. In other words, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation appear to be zero sum or inversely proportional. I guess that's probably more accurate, is inversely proportional. But I'm not exactly sure how to describe the mechanism, with precision. Regardless, the point is that contrary to expectations, extrinsically motivating people, either in terms of threatened punishments or in terms of promised rewards, makes people's intrinsic motivation go down. Now, extrinsic motivation can be more powerful than intrinsic, for sure. Like, for example, having to go to work each day or I'll get fired is ample extrinsic motivation for me to go to work. And I probably wouldn't like it regardless. I mean, it's like, if I didn't have the extrinsic motivation, there's no way I'd choose to do that. I'm not naturally intrinsically motivated to spend my time doing work for other people, like, just for fun. But so I'm not saying that extrinsic motivation should always be avoided or something. I'm just pointing out that part of the whole temporal bargaining thing is that people feel intrinsically motivated when they have autonomy and ownership of their own life and ownership of their choices. When you've got external parties trying to force them, either by denying them access to, say, marijuana, or by drug testing them or whatever, like, what kind of trouble could you get in if you tested positive? Anyway, I'm so glad we got to fucking kick their asses and get you out of there and hopefully teach them a fucking lesson in the process. Those horrible scumbags treating you for cannabis addiction. I should treat them for stupidity with my foot up their ass. I'm sorry to tell you this, people at Mercy Medical Center, but you appear to be experiencing a site-wide epidemic of stupidity. I don't know who contracted it first, but you've all got it. It's like scabies. It's impossible to get rid of. Okay. Let's see what people here say. I didn't mean to strike such a chord, sorry. Oh, that's fine. I am open to all people's suggestions. It might be that I was projecting. It wasn't in this case. Sometimes maybe I do. I think we all project our frames of reference. by and large is the default. You know, we kind of assume that other people understand the world similarly enough to us that we can make a fair number of assumptions. Sometimes we're right because those people are kind of similar to us, or at least in the way that we're the way in question. And sometimes we're wrong, you know. But even like fully informed by cognitive functions, I I'm still just as subject to frame frame assumptions, not really frame projections, but frame assumptions as anybody else. It's hard to have so sophisticated kind of a metacognitive modeling going on that you can conceive in informative ways of how it is to experience being an example of another type, you know. FI tends to put itself in the other person's shoes and say, well, how would this make me feel? But that's of limited use because they might not be like you. The other functions kind of, well, they either are attending to externalize data from another person. It's different than like there's two different kinds of understanding somebody, right? Or something. You can understand it from a top down level via maps, words, symbols, whatever. Or you can understand it experientially. When you're talking about other people, you can't understand them experientially except through their extroverted data. And when you're talking about other people and you're trying to understand them mapped down, um, you still have a limited capacity to understand them because the particulars play a fairly significant role in how a person's life goes, you know? But what's a lot easier to understand are specific instances of, say, a failure to communicate or conflicting values, etc., or even specific instances of respective positions that are fairly established on a given issue. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but the point of it is the alternative to assuming our frame of reference is understanding an alternative frame more fully than maps alone allow. And you can't ever understand an alternative frame experientially because you're locked in your own frame. Here I'm using the word frame to should be replaced with attentional frame. Your attentional configuration frame. Oh God. Working on college essays with Jeffrey. I have a duration limit of about 1 hour. After I didn't look at the clock or anything, but there was a certain point where I was like, oh, okay, how many more of these fucking things do I have to look at? And I went about 10 more minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. I was like, okay, I am done. I cannot do this anymore. I hate this so much. Everything about this offends me and makes me irritated. INFJ best to understand psychology of others. Some guy in here said he can't get it up and said for marijuana. I mean, what makes him think it's from marijuana? I have no problems in that area, and I'm 52, and I smoke cigarettes and weed. And caffeine. Yeah. I mean, I haven't found myself doing that, but I have found myself sicking a duck on people to steal their Starbucks. Get him, duck! And the duck goes, rock, 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 and they go, ah! And I grab the Starbucks from the hand and run away. I sick duck to get my Starbucks. What is marijuana addiction exactly? I know people who rely on weed for sure. It might be grouchy with that, but there's no withdrawal like an addiction. Exactly. I'm addicted to cigarettes. I have actual withdrawal symptoms when I stop smoking cigarettes for long enough. But I don't experience withdrawal, even grouchiness withdrawal symptoms from when I go without weed. I haven't in a long time, granted. But like when my dad died, I stopped smoking weed for a while. I didn't experience any withdrawal symptoms. I experienced that the trauma made it such that weed gave me like a panic attack. So then I stopped using it for a while. Well, yeah, people who are like into the culture surrounding a given drug, that's very dorky. You know, it's very dorkily young. Like we don't have any Bob Marley posters or 420 signs or whatever. It's just a normalized and integrated part of our daily routine, you know. When I start feeling a little antsy or something, I'll pull a vine rip or whatever. It makes me feel momentarily calmed. People who are super into like magical psychedelic drugs shit, I just, and it just goes to show you attentional configuration again. I literally cannot make that leap. Like, when I'm tripping out hard on drugs, I'm not experiencing it as something magical. I'm experiencing it as I'm tripping super hard on drugs. I've never had any kind of meaningful epiphany from drugs that, at least from psychedelics of any sort, that afterwards, you know, retained its apparent amazing wisdom or whatever. One claims that it has no scientific proof. Well, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that more or less. You know, there haven't been there hasn't been a concerted effort nor any success in establishing in academic journals that typology better represents the general population's individual distinctions from one another, better explains it than any other explanation on balance or something. That's not been established to any real academic satisfaction, and they shouldn't be satisfied by work that's been done heretofore to their satisfaction. But um, but that's true for every theory that's um, that's observation intuition first, right? Rather than predicting predicting things so much. The predictions are part of the explanation as well, but it doesn't begin from like an ample amount of clearly isolatable empirics. Like if I throw a rock, that's I'm able to isolate the vector, the field, the object, the agent, and I'm able to do measurements on specific elements of that event, which lasts a concrete amount of time, specific amount of time. Those kind of things are one kind of theory. Relativity, Jungian cognitive functions, is another kind of theory. So, same thing with like tectonic plates. These ideas, all when they were initially produced, were unproven. The problem with Jungian cognitive functions is that because it was never explained properly into a meaningful model, right? So a model has a defined number of fields. It's got a defined set of vectors that are differentiated in defined ways. Like if you think about a model of the solar system, right? It's got objects. The field is outer space. The objects are the sun and the planets and their moons. And a model, a physical model, would show them spinning around at their respective rates of orbit around the sun, right? So you can probably visualize one of those models from your school years. Maybe your science class had one, or maybe you see one on a computer, I guess, nowadays. But where they have the sun in the middle and the planets go around it, and it takes them as long relatively to each other as it does in the real solar system. That's an example of a model, right? It's got objects, fields, vectors that you are attempting to show how it works in a way that you can't see directly, right? So when we look at the solar system, we don't see what we see when we look at a model of the solar system. We can't see all the planets at all. In fact, we just little white dots in the sky. And it doesn't appear as though we're orbiting around the sun. It appears as though the sun is orbiting around us. So you can see how, with that example, you've got a reality that we experience that looks very different than what the explanation looks like when modeled. Well, not everything can be proven, but the point about proving things is remember that your explanation either validates or it falsifies. You can validate 1,000 times, and great. If you falsify once and there's definitive falsification, the other validations don't matter. Your explanation is wrong. So the thing is, we prove things conditionally always, conditional upon new information, but there are plenty of explanations and ideas that have been in that state of conditionality for a really long time, and we essentially accept as factual, determined already, fully determined, no longer subject to update. Sometimes we draw lines around those things, like Newtonian physics is no longer subject to update. Instead, new things in physics are expressed as either quantum or Einsteinian physics. So that's one way that we can close off sections of our understanding, is just by drawing lines around it like that. But as far as Jungian cognitive functions go, if I've proven them to my satisfaction through myriad typing sessions that the basic principles that I articulate as to how attentional configurations express against certain kinds of testings in linked ways, you know. In other words, I'll never test somebody as TI tool and FI tool. There's no possible way that the testing can produce both those results because they would have to produce contradictory responses, contradictory kinds of behavior from the person. And um, and it's like I never encountered this phenomenon where I ask, let's say I ask 6 TI questions. If they're really slow and weak on the first 3, if I'm asking 6 of the same kind, and all of a sudden they get super good and get them and understand it completely and explain why on the second 3. It just never happens. So it's not impossible to objectively assess personality and cognition. The thing is, the key to any objective expression of something, that is to say, the key to being objective in your articulation of conclusions is to, number one, include any caveats and try to be clear about your level of certainty and why. So for some people that I type, I feel confident that they're this type, but I don't believe I could build a defensible case that they're definitely that type and not necessarily some other type. So in that case, I'll try to express that, So in other words, my conclusion here is predicated on more intuition than I'd be comfortable defending against an equally interested prosecutor, so to speak. Namely, me on the other side. I don't know if I could defend against myself. In other instances where you have a really clear-cut polar and a really clear-cut, answer on the, say, either the TI-FI question or the NI-SI question, then it can be, I can say, well, for you not to be this type, I'd need to have the following things occur to convince me I'm wrong about this. I need to do additional testing in this area, which would have to contradict the previous testing in these ways. I need to, and I can generate for you, like, what things would have to be different from the typing session I just did for me to be convinced that the existing data was for some reason misleading. But the fact is, people just don't ever, this never happens. My name's Joe. I'm going to have 2 typing sessions with Eric. And in the first typing session, I act like this, answer like this, and produce this type result. In the second typing session, I act like this, answer like this, and produce that type of result. It's conceivably possible perhaps for to do that with me typing, you'd probably have to be an NTP or an ESTP, because probably an NTP, because in that instance you can fake you can fake TI polar, you can fake NE polar, right? And I don't have great tests for either SE or FI. So if you were to fake those polars, you could get typed by me as, if you were consistent for the whole time, you could get typed by me as ISFP, let's say, any polar. Um, that'd be the easiest one to fake is ISFP. You just have to be medium bad at TI and any polar. You just have like one word answers and stuff. And then come back another typing session and reveal that you're actually an ENTP who understands my typing methodology so well you can fake being an ISFP. That's possible. That's possible. I don't know why somebody would want to do that, but it's possible. Audio keeps dropping out. Is that happening for anybody else or just for Lou? Why is TI always with FE and TE with FI? Well, because command FI tells you what you want. TE tells you how to get there. TI tells you what's fair. FE tells you what's socially acceptable. Fairness is an appeal to the universal, and so is social acceptability. It's an appeal to the external for jurisdiction over deciding and interfacing, whereas FITE is really an appeal to the internal in the sense that your criterion for success is always subjective. If it meets your goal or solves the problem, it's been a successful endeavor. It's fundamentally the subjective pairing of deliberation and interface, just as TI and FE is fundamentally the objective pairing of deliberation and interface. Solid audio. You know that audio freezes at 162 below zero Fahrenheit. Prior to that, it is, as you currently experience it, a gas. Yeah, true story about audio. It was not a true story, of course, that I was a movie projectionist, but now I wish I had been. What would you say the smoking gun is for me being an ENFP? Oh gosh, Rubinar. Oh, goodness gracious. So many smoking guns. I mean, the other thing, one thing that Ruben R reveals is that, like demonstrative, if I've got a good test for it, demonstrative NE tests very well. Having spent time with Ruben, he's not extroverting a lot of extroverted intuition on the regular. He would seem to be extroverting less extroverted intuition than he might seem to be extroverting around here. But I'd point out that just because he selects memorable things to say, and you remember those, that's from possibilities he generates. That's much more of an NI tool kind of expression of extroverted intuition in service of extroverted feeling. Is the ENFP the most introverted extrovert? I've heard that thing said about ENTPs before. They're the most introverted extrovert. I don't find ENFPs particularly introverted in any sense of the word. Like, I'm more introverted than Les. Our neighbor Les is an ENFP, and I don't think anybody who's seen the two of us together would say that I'm the more extroverted one. Heidi Prevy's not dumb, but she's also not correct about cognitive functions. So, I mean, don't underestimate ENFP's intuitiveness. I mean, they're intuition doms too. It's just that extroverted intuition is paired with a subjective deliberation function, which I think makes them more subject to liking the smell of their own farts because they've got both of their epistemology functions subjective, including their tool function.
I'm making tikka vegetables. Do you want any?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. You would say that about any type, Eric? No, I wouldn't say that about any type. I would say that if you've got instrumental subjective functions, then you're going to be habitually subjective in your epistemologies. And, thereby your absolute value, extroverted intuition, and extroverted thinking are going to be framed as under a more particularist light. In my extroverted intuition, I validate it against, FENITAI as a tool, all of which are universalist, but they validate with TE, FI as a tool, both of which are particularist. NI fifth slot is more of a wash, as far as universalist particularist. I mean, I think they like to work on the same kind of external metaphysical field that I work on, and are also appealing to, resonance with NI receiving people. I just think that they attain that best when the subject of their communications is itself subjectivity, namely, their feelings, relationships, whatever, stuff like that. I think ENFPs probably make good relationship counselors, marriage counselors, whatever, because their FI's tool function, it's appropriate to use all day at work, and then they're not married to it as an absolute value when they get home. And I think in that instance, their fluency with SI and NI is very useful in evaluating a couple. Their conscious use of SI as a knowledge function is very appropriate given they're evaluating a specific couple. Their tool function of FI allows them to put themselves in the other party's shoes all the time and see it from their perspective, and try to, unlike ENTP, instead of trying to parse who's correct, they try to bridge the gap, find compromise, etc. So, they do have places where they reign supreme, definitely over ENTPs. But they're like ENTPs, they're best served to execute their intuition in some teleological frame in service of something or of others, ENTPs are more likely to be teleologically crippled than ENFPs. I am practically allergic to outcome-based criteria, solvency, and expectations of, goal referencing to establish success or failure. You'd be trying to get the couple to accept whoever's correct, but be nice about it. Now, FI and TE don't lack TI. Somebody either decides things consciously by examining what's important to them and the relationship of the thing they're deciding about to that importance. Or they decide things communicatively about which language is correct and which we should ignore. So in other words, you either decide things personally or you decide things um, communally. You decide things experientially or you decide things communicatively. Nobody consciously can do both because of the same reason why people are right-handed or left-handed. To move through the world is to encounter a variety of circumstances which necessitate an instantaneous default approach, whether it's opening a doorknob with your right hand every time or eating meow with your right hand every time. The reason it necessitates that is because without autopiloting a variety of things, we can't pay attention to anything. If we weren't able to autopilot things like grab a fork with your hand, if we thought about it every time, which hand should I use, then during the time when we were doing that, we wouldn't be able to be paying attention to anything else. So, in the same way that handedness is autopiloted for the purpose of enabling you to be, in other words, it's not possible to fluidly be and make decisions about every single thing you do all the time, right? So too is it attentionally. When you enter into a situation, being necessitates that you're paying attention to it in some way and not in, and specifically, therefore, not in alternatives to that way. So just as we default to one hand as an autopilot, so too do we default to our ongoing attentional frame as, and it becomes hardwired into us, or is we're born with it hardwired into us, I'm not sure. The point being such that every time I encounter everything, I'm encountering it through an attentional default of extroverted intuition. And in other words, I'm both passively and actively looking for and engaging with words, first and foremost, whether it's about reality, whether it's about other words, whether it's those words themselves that I'm paying attention to, or new words that I'm generating. I'm fundamentally communication oriented. This is so much so that when Rachel's phone says, make a left on Rothschild Street here. Make a left, take a left at this light. Get in the left lane, make a left on Rothschild Street. And I see that the name of the street is not that. I'm very hesitant to make a left. Even if Rachel had showed me the map and I saw the picture and everything, I'd still be hesitant because I believe words. The word there did not match the word here. Rachel said she thought it turned into that other street that way, and she was right. Regardless, this is an example of a communication focus rather than some other kind of experiential focus, like trusting the map first, trusting my memory because we've been there before, trusting my eyes if I had strained around and looked for the place or something, trusting the fact that this is a podunk hick place, my intuition that obviously there aren't that many places you can turn. It's probably here. It's telling me to turn here, etc. There's a lot of other things that one can trust besides just these two words that the phone said. One word the phone said and one word I read on a sign. So people naturally gravitate to circumstances and situations that allow them to pay attention in their native ways, the most comfortable ways, and ideally reward them for paying attention thusly. Unfortunately, the world doesn't reward all functions equally or all kinds of being equally. Since you're dealing with other people, obviously extroverted functions get rewarded more by the world than introverted functions. But most significantly, I would say regarding that issue is like SE polar is the opposite of getting rewarded by the world. If you have trouble doing things, pulling the trigger, executing shit, finishing projects, whatever, the world doesn't have very much patience for that. And it doesn't matter how wonderfully careful you are in your either logical or emotional deliberation, and to some extent both if you're an FI and or TI Dom. The world doesn't tend to reward that. Well, I don't use the term shadow functions myself, but if you're talking about your unconscious functions, then yeah, you obviously have the least capacity to metacognate about your own attentional deficits when you don't have any lexicon of terms to use to even understand the possible attentional strengths and deficits. And you're maximally able to metacognate regarding your unconscious functions when you have the most as developed and specific a map as possible to understand each of these things. Then you're more empowered to metacognate about it. But ultimately, I mean, and I guess ultimately it's helpful. You know, I found it helpful in recognizing, oh, I'm like, this is an FI thing. That's why I'm feeling. That's why I'm confused or whatever. You know, I can recognize more when there's a thorn in the foot of a horse I can't hear or see directly because it's too far away. It's a good analogy, I think. Good enough. Adequate analogy for government work.
Someone posted, Mark Twain must be so proud of his daughter Shania.
That's good stuff.
That is good stuff.
That's funny hilarity with just a dash of hee hee.
Oh yeah.
That thumbs up was for you, Cone Man. If anybody else got a lick off of that thumbs up before it got to you, Cone Man, I'm sorry it arrived wet with spit on it. Now, would an ISFP be double the doing things since they're both SE and TE? Well, they're 4-slot TE. So that's like my SI, right? In the example with the bread, I didn't use my SI knowing. Instead, I tried to NIFE figure out when to take the bread out when I should have relied on my SI knowing. You have a tendency to actually under trust or respect your own 4th slot, I think. It's the self-deprecating function, the one in which you don't feel bad about admitting you're bad at it. It's like, yeah, I suck at that boring ass shit. And maybe you should do it for me. Uh, Whereas you're going to get a lot more defensive critiques of your sixth slot or eighth slot function, maybe even your seventh. Because given their unconsciousness, you feel ill, ill qualified to defend yourself in those areas. And of course, important in these calculations is to remember that um, that particular circumstances that are either say aggressive towards your native stack or unreasonably friendly to your native stack, either of those situations will shape a person's relationship with ways they talk about and ontological comfort with their own function stack. I guess 1 and 3 were kind of the same thing. So go ahead, kick me in the balls. I deserve it. I deserve it for trying to have 3 things but have 2 of them actually be the same thing. Alien 60. You think you'd be in a real mess if you hadn't discovered typology? Because you feel as though it allowed you to understand how and why you're different from other people. I found that to be the case when I learned about typology for the first time in my 30s without anything about cognitive functions, just reading type descriptions. I was like, oh, this is so relieving. It's like to finally get a diagnosis of what's wrong with me. And such a flattering diagnosis too. Of course, all the type descriptions are like ENTP, the inventor, you know. But I wasn't smitten by the positivity of the description, especially. I felt relieved to understand, to have some kind of explanation of why I was so different from everybody else and how. At least it's like, okay, if I'm this personality type and I behave like this, and I can see these, I read all the type descriptions, I can see how I kind of recognize, oh, that guy is probably one of this type. Oh, this person I know is probably this one. Um, it allowed me to sort of piece together that most of the people in my life were types that prioritized things that conflicted with the things I prioritized for reasons of personality type, not because I was doing it wrong or something. Yeah, it does help one to go a little easier on oneself. Your heavily TE types will try to say something like, the problem with typology is that it allows people to make excuses for their failures and persist in them. Of course, for people who aren't TE types, they're not always trying to improve things, attain a goal, succeed at everything all the time, be productive, whatever. To some extent, we have to acknowledge that the world's antipathy towards their unproductivity is just their random misfortune and TE Dom's random good fortune. Of course, the world's going to reward people productively producing solutions and attaining outcomes and stuff because it's useful. Whereas this has a little bit of utility to a small population of people. But it's hard to argue that the guy who painted our wall wasn't being more useful than I'm currently being. If you want to measure utility and concrete impacts, and it's hard to measure impacts that don't come in specific units, you know. Usually you measure impacts in dollars or bodies. But you can also measure impacts in terms of scope and significance of harm to system integrity or something. Like you can run rights as a utilitarian impact. You'd always want to run it as an even if you don't want to accept my order of questions framework superiority argument. Here are the concrete impacts of ignoring system integrity as per their rights violating plan they're advocating. I'm doing well, and I thank you for asking. I'm glad to see you again, Winston's mom. I hope you're having fun these holidays. Oh, yeah. I don't like how they think they know what's best, and if you don't want to listen to them, something is wrong with you, or whatever. Lug. What does LG mean?
Yeah, what does it?
Is it log? Oh, you're just saving a letter, skipping the O. Leg? Or does it stand for?
Or is it I guess?
Oh, I guess. That's an I, not an L. Okay, fine.
I mean, maybe.
Cool.
I don't know.
I think you're right. I think your NI has landed upon the truth. Life is good. Well, that's LG, but both of them capitalized. That's their motto, that company. Like, for example, I really do dumb shit at times and not think about stuff and be impulsive and think only short term in my idealized self. I'd like to be more NI, I guess. Well, yeah, I mean, for in instances when people are impulsive and do too much stuff, invariably they wish they had been more deliberative or had known better. One of the two, you know?
Thanks, Cone Man.
I agree with you, Cone Man. Her voice is like a whisper of butter on a crepes Suzette.
What's that?
Is it really thin French pancakes?
Crepe?
Yeah. You say crepe, I say crepes.
Crepes?
You're right, but I pronounce it that way.
I like the way you pronounce things.
Crepes Suzette or crepes Suzette
What is Suzette?
orange crepes.
What makes them orange?
They have orange in them.
Like,
oranges.
Oh, okay.
And it's normally also you have Grand Marnier on top of it, which is orange flavored liqueur. And you know, you could do that and make sure you cook off the alcohol still, but that would be a little bit tricky. I don't know if they normally do that or not. But if you go to like a fancy restaurant, you gotta check to make sure there's no rum in the rum cake. You gotta check to make sure there's no cognac on the crepe Suzette, or else you'll consume alcohol. I think it's the orange one. We could Google it. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on extra thin pancakes. Just a casual fan. I do enjoy getting crepes when you see them on the menu. Denny's had crepes for a while on the menu.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do. But I think that kind of definitively, There's a lot of people watching right now, show media.
That really is.
123 trillion. I don't know what the number is.
That's got to be some record.
Yeah, I know. I'm setting YouTube records every day. All day, every day. At Luminex, under 2 minutes. It's a story of a creep called Suzette. That's how it came out from a copy paste. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Watching now. It's a crazy coincidence that it's got all the digits in order like that. You are correct. I've only had them once many years ago, so I remembered wrong, apparently. Well, that's SI for you. It periodically remembers wrong. I wonder where I left my water. I must have left it outside.
Water?
Yes. Oh, here's a little water. There's water's on behind the sink, you know.
Yes, it's on a little shelf, right? Yeah. I like them there.
Yeah.
Is it French dessert? Caramel sugar. Yeah. Orange.
And Grand Marnier, which is orange liqueur. You could use triple sugar orange curacao, I guess, as well, apparently. Flambéed. Yeah, well, so they do burn off the alcohol. That's cool. NISE and NESI pairings make sense to me. Yeah. It makes sense to me too.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I'd like to watch the Thursday night football game. I feel like I might have another poop coming on. And also that I've shot my ideational load for the moment. So if it got on your face, that was entirely unintentional. Have a wonderful evening, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.